Hey, what's up, everybody? I hope that you're doing well. It has been a little while since I've been on, and I wanted to come out and share some of my thoughts with you today. So, I'm Joshua Betancourt, and this is a channel that was created to develop a community and like minded people who were interested in the topics of personal development, self-development, spiritual growth, conscientious awareness. We talk about ideas related to neurolinguistic programming and how the mind works and how we kind of store and recall and use information. We talk about topics like systems theory and esoteric ideas related to spirituality and meditation. So, this is Paradigm Shifting. Welcome. For those of you who are new, thanks for tuning in. And for those of you who are kind of repeating, welcome back. This is Paradigm Shifting. Cool. So I am just returning from Florida to spend some time. I went this past weekend to spend some time with my grandmother, and it's probably the last time I'm going to be able to spend time with her in person. She's ill. She contracted cancer that spread aggressively over the last few months, and I went to kind of say goodbye. So the weekend was really interesting. It was a powerful weekend in a couple of different ways, and I wanted to kind of just talk about it and share some of my thoughts related to it that hopefully might put things in perspective. Because death has a tendency to do that, right? It has a tendency to really change the way that we perceive our experience in our life, and it has this impact from a prioritization standpoint, where we kind of reassess what's really important, and how we're spending our time and who we're spending our time with, and the expression of who we are in the world. And kind of all of those thoughts came to me. So I'll share some stories, and then we'll call it a paradigm shifting video for sure. So I was having a conversation with my mom. I think it was last week or whatever, and after that conversation, I kind of started just thinking about the past and growing up and my life, and I came from humble beginnings, right? And I feel I feel like that's a big component of who I am, right? This humility in life. And it's funny, the first memory that I have is when I was 3 years old. I was sick when I was little. I would get just colds and infections in my ears and throat, and it's pretty common practice for young children who have kind of these repetitive kind of viral illnesses to have tubes placed in their ears. So when I was 3 years old, I had to go onto the operating table and have tubes in my ears. But it's the very first memory that I have. I was laying on the gurney, and they were wheeling me into the operating room, and they were trying to put the anesthetic on, and I saw my mom and I saw my godmother, one on each side, and I just remember crying and screaming, and the lights flashing by, right? The lights on the ceiling flashing by. And that's the very first memory that I have of life, right? And the second memory I have is with my grandmother. I grew up in Fort Walton Beach, and there's a place called Shalimar. There's a bridge, there's a bay, right? So it's on the Gulf Coast, in the northwestern Gulf Coast, and there's a bridge called Shalimar Bridge, and my grandmother was a resourceful woman, right? So she had crab traps or whatever, and I remember being maybe 3, approaching 4, and she took me out. We walked from her house to the bridge, and she she took me out to the bay, and I waded in the water, and she taught me how to, set traps and, retrieve traps and, kind of um, go crabbing for all intents and purposes. But that memory is really, really vivid to me because, it was like my introduction to the ocean, right, and the water, which is a big part of my life and something that, I've always kind of held, near and dear to my heart. And it was, time with her and learning, and, it was a beautiful day. The water was perfect. It's just a very vivid, clear memory of my first experience, and, really the second memory that I can remember at that age. And they, all of the memories aren't good, right? There's, in life we're going to have both the positives and the negatives, right? But it was the one that was most powerful to me. And so this weekend was tough, right? Because, I kind of took a look at, the way that my life has unfolded, and it was tough because, the circumstances weren't always great, and I had to get away from, my hometown, and kind of a lot of, the people that I cared about and the people that I loved who still remain, where I grew up. And it's the typical, right, kind of coming of age story and the challenges associated with that. And because of that, I have I've somewhat not been as present as I would have liked in their lives, and in my communication, right, with my family and my grandmother, and my aunts and uncles and all of those things. So, when I do get an opportunity to go back home, right, they're the priority. I go and visit my aunts, uncles, I'll see my cousins or what have you, and then after that I'm on the water. So the weekend was tough, and here's why. Like I mentioned, we come from humble beginnings, and there's always been some type of tension or conflict in the relationships that exist amongst my entire family, right? My uncles and aunts, and they've always had their differences and challenges, and in recent years those differences have been more prevalent, right? And they've caused kind of separation amongst my aunts and uncles, and responsibilities related to taking care of my grandmother, and all of these things. And I looked at that, and it made me sad, right? From the perspective of it takes a traumatic experience, right? It takes the passing of a loved one for us to really take a step back and kind of rationalize our behavior, and the things that we deem as offensive, and the things that we take personal, and the assumptions that we make. And sometimes, because we get so wrapped up in those experiences, we forget the things that are really important, right? Which is these ideas of forgiveness and compassion, and being an expression of love and beauty, right? And being a family, and because of that, for the past few years, there's been, probably more than the past few years, it's probably been like 4 or 5 years now, there's been kind of a rift between my family, and that rift has caused kind of people to not be able to kind of spend time with their loved ones. And I was pretty sad about that. So I went down and I talked to my family, and I asked them to come together, and we had a conversation. And I've gotten past the point in my life where I buy into drama or problems, because most of the time there's no value in that, right? Most of the time the unnecessary dramas are based on these ideas of you've offended me, or I took something personally, and in really order to elevate past those things, you have to one, want to, and then two, you have to be able to take a step back and get out of this idea of something happening to you, and kind of perceive the situation from a different perspective. So I usually have a tendency to stay out of these things, but um, when I went down there, I had this conversation about, hey, let's set aside our differences for the time being, and not argue and not fight and not quarrel with one another, and not prevent um, kind of access to my grandmother, right, and access to us coming together as a family in this time. And it was powerful. It was really, really powerful, right? And so my uncle, who hadn't seen her for a while, had a conversation with me, and I said, no, just come over. We'll figure it out. And he came over, right, and he sat with my grandmother, who has been sent home for hospice. She's got stage 4 cancer, and it's spreading throughout her body rapidly, and so she's on morphine and in and out of consciousness, and has a trach in order to breathe, and she's got an IV drip and oxygen. So it's it's time. But she lived a full life, right? She's 95 years old, and she lived a very full and good life. But it was it was powerful, right, to see the love that exists between a son and a mother, or between a daughter and a mother, in the moments when they're on the verge of passing away, right? It kind of dissolves all of these differences that we have. It dissolves all of these notions of offense, or these concepts of betrayal, or anger, or separation, and it lets all of those things fall away, and what's left is this idea of, or this expression of humanity, right? This expression of compassion, and this expression of love, right? And remorse, and I think that in some sense, we look back at those moments and we wish to ourselves, like, I wish I would have done better. I wish I could have been more. I wish I would have this. I wish I would have that. And for me, the wish is, I realize that I need to spend more time. I need to make more of an investment into those relationships, because they're important to me. They're the people that I love, and yeah. So I saw that, and I experienced that, and I thought, it was a beautiful thing. It was a moment of healing, and even if it's just a temporary moment of healing, it was a moment of healing where, the people that I grew up with, that I grew up watching, support one another, and who over time had grown to not communicate with one another, were coming together again. And yeah, that was powerful. So, I went and I sat with my grandmother for a little while, and I shared some thoughts with her, and kind of said our goodbyes, right? So I wanted to share this message because I think that this message is important, and it's something that I commonly talk about, in the sense that the ride is short, right? And no one's guaranteed tomorrow. We're just not. And in that, if we kind of adopt that as this view, right, this principle of, how is it that I'm going to be based on the fact that I'm not going to be here forever, right? And how is it that I make the world a better place? And how is it that I contribute to make my relationships better? With that understanding that, it's a temporary thing, I think it empowers us, and it acts as, a waypoint, or a guide, or, a reminder of the importance of how it is that we think, the words that we use, and the expression that we are, and the emotions that we carry, and being an example of that, and the light of goodness, right, and the light of love, and the light of compassion, and the light of forgiveness, and the light of acceptance, is so important. It's so important because we all can find ourselves becoming jaded and hypocritical, and just kind of wrapped up in our own in our own minutia, right? Wrapped up in our own perspective. And if we give our attention to that all the time, then the reality is that our entire world, our entire experience is that. But we have a choice, we have a choice to be better. We have a choice to forgive. We have a choice to help. We have a choice to be an expression of compassion. We have a choice to be an expression of love. And those are the moments that are important. Those are the ones that we remember. It was an absolutely beautiful, loving moment being out there when I was 4 years old, seeing these crabs and pulling up traps and enjoying the precious moments and the beautiful moments of life. So I urge each and every one of you to do that, right? I've said it before and I'll say it again. Go hug your babies. Go call your mom, call your dad, right? If they're still around, the family that you do have, call them, let them know that you love them. Ask them how you can be of service, what it is that you can do to make their lives easier. Or maybe it's just talking, maybe it's just, visiting, maybe it's whatever. Go spend your moments doing that, and you will enrich your life. You will enrich the quality of your life beyond measure. I say these messages and I talk about these messages often because as much as I like to share these ideas and thoughts, these really, they're for me just as much as they're for everyone else, right? These, reminders of how to be a better person, right? A better expression, how to live a better life, and yeah. So that's the paradigm shifting video for today. I hope that you're all doing well. I know that there's been some increases in COVID around here in Atlanta, and I know across the country, and there's still a lot of madness in the world. But I hope that that you're doing well, that your family's doing well, that you're healthy, that you're taking care of one another, that you're being an expression of love to one another. So with that, this is paradigm shifting. I'm glad that you were here. All right, until we talk again, take care.